Hey, Messengers listeners. On today's episode, we're doing Facebook 101, a little bit of the basic do's and don'ts of Facebook advertising. Whether you're a seasoned Facebook advertiser or kind of a newbie, hopefully there's something in here that you should be able to take away and start improving your results on Facebook. Stay tuned. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Messengers podcast. I am Chris Searles. With me today is Rob Seifert, our creative director here at Searles Graphics. Today we're going to do a little bit of an overview, not really a deep dive, but an overview of Facebook advertising. I guess Facebook 101 we'll call it. I know, Rob, you have some questions. You've kind of recently started doing some of this yourself. Rob doesn't, typically handle a lot of the digital stuff on our side here. So, from a creative standpoint, he takes care of it a lot. But from the nuts and bolts of how to actually execute those campaigns on the digital side is something I know you have some questions about and want to talk about a little bit. And
sure.
We kind of figured that might be a good format here for a lot of people that are just getting started or just trying to figure out Facebook's interface. I think the first thing to talk about is why it's valuable, why we focus on Facebook, and we're not really going to go into a lot of the other digital advertising options that are out there. We're really going to try to focus on Facebook here, but Facebook and Instagram kind of tie themselves in together these days. But again, we're going to try to stick with Facebook and see if we can do a good overview of that. From a value standpoint, really, there's just never been any other as comprehensive view of kind of a faceless prospect as there is now with Facebook. So really it's the targeting options that are available to you that make it as valuable as it is or as it can be. Recently, we've talked about it in the past. I think we talked about direct mail in a previous episode. I forget which episode it was. We'll try to link to that on YouTube for all of our YouTube listeners, watchers out there. But we've talked about how we're kind of pushing a lot of people, not necessarily away from digital, but back into traditional. And one of the reasons for that is the value that used to be there in terms of, again, we'll try to stick with Facebook in this episode, but in terms of Facebook specifically, it's not as valuable as it used to be. There's not as huge of an ROI in it because it's become more crowded. Ultimately, Facebook sells impressions. They sell, eyeballs, and they can only generate so many of those in a day. So as more and more people are looking to reach those eyeballs, it becomes more expensive to do so. And depending on what you need your advertising costs to be, as it becomes more expensive, you're obviously going to get a little less and less value out of that. That doesn't mean that it's not still valuable, and that there still isn't a lot of opportunity to be had there. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. But really, it's those targeting metrics. It's all that stuff that Facebook's collecting about you that you either are not happy about or you don't want them to collect about you, but they're learning about you and they're learning who you are. And the entire purpose of that is so that they can sell that information to people like us and people like you that are listening to this, so that you can really try to reach the right person at the right time with whatever your message is.
Right. Yeah, well, right off the bat, mentioning that, one of my first questions would be to find out, what demographics my target audience would have. I mean, let's just use the instance that I'm using, my photography. I'll sell fine art prints online. I'm really pushing to do that rather than a portrait photography service just to fine art prints. So then I know, when I go through the interface, I see items on there, where people have hobbies, and I try to find people that are, that have outdoor hobbies, things like that. People that might have an interest in landscape architecture, but it's just really my guess,
Mm-hmm.
based on those interests and hobbies, and I don't really see anything specifically related to people who are interested in photography. They don't get that, granular with the information on there. So what helps determine that? I
So
mean,
there's a couple that's kind of a big question, right?
mhm.
Identifying who your customers are, which is an even bigger question than just Facebook. But I know, specifically you're asking about then how Facebook would categorize them and how you can then reach those categories.
Right.
One of the I think more or most underutilized features of Facebook's ad platform that I think a lot of beginners don't even really know exists is the ability to create what we call lookalike audiences, which
Mhm.
is you can import, if you collect emails from your customers or you have an email marketing list, you can collect those emails, import them into Facebook's ad platform. This tends to work, or really only works primarily for B2C businesses, because what Facebook does then is they try to match those emails with an actual Facebook profile,
Right.
to really find, hey, this is the person that you're actually talking about. This is their Facebook profile.
Uh-huh.
And then they allow you to target those lists or target people that are similar in what their likes. They'll try to come up with a general profile of what your demographic is, and allow you to target people that are similar to that profile.
So that's something somebody that has an email database of their clients might utilize.
Yeah.
Upload their entire email database to Facebook, and then it would match. I guess it averages out that information.
Yeah, I mean, that's it'll be their proprietary algorithm. Exactly how it works
Uh-huh.
is going to be, but generally speaking, that's it.
Okay.
They'll try to find commonalities, common interests between them all, and then try to match that to other people.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that you can do would be to find pages that are popular in your space, and try to see if you can find a way to kind of narrow down what some of those interests might be or why they're popular, and really target demographics that way. There's a lot of things that you can try. Ultimately, a lot of it comes down to testing, right? And that's really more of just a general advertising, marketing, basic premise that we push for everything that we do. But ultimately, test your audiences against each other. When we talk
Sure.
about A/B testing, we're not talking about just A/B testing ad copy or images or headlines or calls to action. We're talking about, who am I actually targeting? Am I targeting the right people? And let me run the same ads to two completely different groups of people that I think, both might be good targets for us, and let's see which one of them converts at a better rate, which one of them brings a higher return at a lower cost. All those things can be tested, and that's one of the beauties of platforms like Facebook, is the ability to test to that level, and really, really drill down, and hone in on who you're targeting based on actual results and what's working and what's not working.
Yeah, I did that to an extent. I mean, I haven't run a lot of Facebook ads for myself personally. I probably run, maybe, one a month for the past year. I've been trying to do it. But I do use their marketing tools, and it's helped me with my demographic results. I mean, I can see, I can narrow down age groups now, and I see that more women than men, have eyes on my ads than. So when I select my audience, I kind of narrow it down that way, based on the demographics. But,
Well, and for a lot of people too, kind of, we're talking a little bit specifically about what you're trying to do, but a lot of people have different products that reach completely different demographics too.
Mhm.
So one of the things you can do is through your, whether it's your e-com platform or your point of sale solution, if you're collecting email addresses, is you can even drill down into individual products and try to then come up with lookalike audiences for each one of those products and market differently for each one of those. So there's a lot that you can do to try to narrow down how to find the right audience. But ultimately, all of it just comes down to trial and error. I mean,
Right.
that's everything we do as marketers, right? We make the best guess that we can and try to base it in as much data and fact and information as we can. But ultimately, it still is a question mark as to whether or not it's going to work or if there's a better option. And that's when testing and really what I guess is the topic of next week's podcast, where we're talking about a lot of data-driven type results,
Right.
but really using the data that's available to you to optimize your campaign. And that, in general, I think is a topic that I wanted to touch on in this podcast, which is you have the ability. It's one of the reasons, again, why these platforms are so valuable, because of how well you can test. And then once you've tested, how quickly you can pivot based on the results of that test. Where if you're running magazine ads and it's a monthly publication, you're either limited to once a month making a change to that ad, or really in a more realistic scale, you probably sign like a 6-month contract, or at least a multi-issue contract with that magazine,
Right.
And you're stuck to running that campaign for the life of that contract to then determine whether or not it worked. And you can lose 6 months pretty quickly that way.
Right.
Where on Facebook, it's, and a lot of other digital advertising mediums, it's pretty easy to test for a week and determine this one versus this one. Hey, that one really outperformed option A. Let's go with that, and now let's tweak it again and optimize it.
Sure.
So testing is key, and it's crucial to the way that you're actually using it. And if you're not doing that kind of stuff, we did another episode on measuring, right? On measuring your marketing. We did a whole episode on that. And the whole point was, if you're not measuring it, there's no point in, you're just kind of throwing money down the drain, because you have no idea whether or not what you're doing is working, how well it's working, if something else could be working better for you. So that's kind of a key, is coming up with a metric that you're going to test,
Right.
making sure that metric is actually meaningful and valuable. One of the pieces of advice I give just about everybody when it comes to Facebook advertising in particular is please, 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 please don't ever click that boost post button. It was the day that I saw that come out on Facebook's platform was the day that I cringed at what it was going to do to small businesses and small business marketers. But it was also the same day that I bought stock in Facebook because I knew how people would use it. And really, the bottom line is it's the easy button. It's the lazy button. That's somebody that doesn't want to spend the time in Facebook's ad platform to do it the right way, and to learn the platform and learn how to use it to figure out how they're going to measure it.
Right.
And instead, they're just going to say, I want more people to see this. Let me just throw $20 at it, or $100.
When I started, that's how I did it.
You and almost everybody.
I did. I was lazy.
I mean, there's a reason they put it there, right?
I would create a post specifically to promote, and then I would get the boost post, and then it was already set up, and it was a post about my product and service, so I would just say that's ready to go, and then
the biggest reason I don't like that, other than the fact that it's the easy way out, it's the lazy way out, without really coming up with an audience and designing a campaign and coming up with a budget and a target and measuring whether or not there's a return there. That, I guess, would be the biggest reason why I don't like it. But the second biggest reason is that kind of in line with all of that, I think it's one of the biggest culprits to leading people to believe in vanity metrics as a return. We have a client here, a really good client that still does all their own Facebook advertising and marketing, and when I kind of was asked to help out with some of that a little bit and drilled down into what their ad manager looked like, what their campaigns looked like and how they were running their campaigns, and what I found was that it was basically, hey, well, we did a post that was promoting something that we were doing, and then we would hit boost post and throw $50 at it, and and look, we got 20 people to click on a link. And when I said, well, okay, but every one of those people, your goal was to sell them something immediately after they clicked on that link, how many of them actually bought something? The response was, well, we don't really know. And the reality of that is, for 5 minutes more, maybe, they could have actually tracked down exactly how many people bought what they were selling, how much they spent, what their return on exactly what their investment was. And it was kind of a combination of a lack of knowledge and a lack of desire to put the time and effort into the platform that it deserved in order to actually measure those things, and come up with a strategy that was really going to work. Test a couple of ads against each other, test different ways of running those ads, test different demographics. So all of the realities of the way that could have been done and been done well kind of went out the window, because it was easy for somebody to say they were doing their job by clicking the boost post button and throwing some dollars at it, throwing a couple of demographic criteria in there, and then just letting it go.
Sure.
So I hate that. That is kind of what it leads to, is Facebook leading you to believe in their own metrics. When they are giving you how many people saw this ad, what does that mean? Right? What's the reality of what that actually means to your business? And I mean, if you can measure that and the answer to that question, then I got a job for you, because you might be the only one on the planet that actually has an answer to that. But there's no reason not to actually go and learn the platform and do it the right way.
Yeah, it definitely, it takes some time. It's, just myself, and I'm fairly technical, I work in a technical industry, and had a little bit of difficulty trying to, determine where to go in their interface. I mean, it's, right off the bat, when you come in, there's a difference between a campaign and and just running an ad singly. I think that's related, right away. Just you talking about it now, I think it's related to what you're saying. If you have different products, you create ad campaigns for a different product and categorize all those ads within those campaigns.
Yeah. So that distinction, I think, is a question that gets asked a lot, and it's funny, because that, I think, is actually one of the tougher things to kind of figure out. How do you organize those things, and how do you group them together?
Sure.
And ultimately, there's not really a right or a wrong answer. What it comes down to primarily is what you can do at each level. For the most part, a campaign is some logical grouping of either creative, a creative concept that you're running, or like you said, if it's one particular product that you want to kind of measure entirely separate, and keep that separate from another product that you're running. If it's an event, an event would likely be tied to a campaign for that event. That's, generally speaking, is what a campaign is. An ad group is where you would set an actual budget and define who your audience is, right? So if you wanted to test audiences against each other, so you wanted to test different demographics and different potential customers, and decide which one was going to convert better, again, your campaign would be that high level, okay, I'm promoting product X, and this ad group is going to market to women between the ages of 45 and 65 who are interested in X, Y, and Z. The other one is going to be men between the ages of blah, blah, blah,
Right.
and so that's your ad groups would be testing different demographic criteria against each other, or using, if you wanted different ads, right? If you wanted to test, well, I'm running videos in this one, and here's kind of a budget, because you set your budgets at an ad group level too. So, here's what I want to try for all my video creative. Here's my picture creative in maybe another ad campaign.
Right.
That necessarily doesn't have to be the way that you break it up, though. I mean, you could certainly test a video versus an image as an A/B test within a particular campaign. But overall, really you're setting a budget on at an ad group level, and you're setting your audience at an ad group level. So if you wanted to test your audience against each other, that's where you would do that. And then the ad itself is the creative, right? That's where
Sure.
we're going to test, again, do I want to do a picture versus a video, or two different pictures against each other, or test two different headlines against each other. But ultimately, that's just, hey, this is the creative somebody's actually going to see.
Yeah.
But I think the key to that, again, is that there's not really any right answer aside from just the functional piece of this is what you can do at this level.
Right.
And then how you decide you want to organize that. I think a lot of people I know personally, even when I started getting into that stuff, got way too hung up on trying to make sure I did all that the right way, without realizing that there's not really a right way. It's all about kind of what you want to do, and everything can be changed in the future. So don't spend too much time worrying about
So that
it.
part of it is just how kind of you keep your
It's how you
stuff
wanna stay
advertised.
organized.
It's how you keep your ads organized
Yep.
and everything like that.
Yeah.
I think the biggest question I have is setting an ad budget. It's one of the first questions they ask right in the beginning. After you go through 2 clicks on the pages, they want you to set an ad budget. And not having done it that often, it's hard for you to determine right off the bat how much money you want to spend.
Yeah, and I think that's a problem. Anybody that's new to advertising in any medium, or any particular channel, needs to start to figure out, right? If you've never done television advertising before, how do you have any idea what that budget should be? You could be a seasoned marketer or advertiser, but if all you've ever done are radio and print and direct mail, trying to get into television is it's a learning experience. It's the same with digital, right?
Right.
And the same thing from search advertising to social advertising to what should my budget be on Facebook versus what it should be on Instagram. Primarily, again, most of it comes down to trial and error. And it's one of the nice things about those digital platforms is that you have the ability to kind of test and put a budget together that's reasonable, that you think will be enough to deliver a return, right? So if you're selling, for example, right, if you have a print that you're trying to sell for anywhere from $65 to $250, depending on what they buy, what size, and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
What do you think you would need to spend to get at least one person to buy? I mean, ideally, you'd want it to be less than $65, right? But ultimately, we know that that's not always the case, right? Your first $100 you spend might bring you nobody. The second $100 might earn you 5 sales.
Right.
So you want to try to set a budget that's reasonable enough to return more than one sale as a test. But don't spend your entire marketing budget in 3 days because you kind of believe it's going to work for you without actually testing whether or not it's really going to work for you.
Sure.
So a lot of it, I mean, it's all individual, right? You
Right.
kind of have to make that determination. Again, understanding that there's no right answer. The answer is spend as little as you can to get as many
Yeah.
as many customers as you can, right? But
I guess that's why.
that's what I always say is start with an amount that you can afford to lose should it be completely unsuccessful. Right? That it's not going to break the bank. If you say, look, I'm going to put $1,000 into it, and if I don't sell one thing, I'm okay. right? I don't
Right.
want to lose $1,000. It's not my goal here. My goal is that I'm actually going to get a return on that. But I feel like that's enough money for me to get a legitimate test out of this, see if it's going to work. And if I get nothing out of it, it's not going to break the bank. It's not going to put me in the poorhouse. It's not going to put me out of business, but it'll be a bummer. I want it to work,
Yeah.
but it's not going to be the end all be all of, my business, and that's it.
Yeah.
Start with that. And then if you see that it's working, throw more money at it. If it's not, try to change and pivot, or
Right.
decide that it's not the right channel and not the right medium.
Yeah, I think I get it. I mean, I think the confusion that I have with it is just that there's no real scale to it. I mean, with like magazine advertising, there's rates for ad sizes with, airtime on television or radio. But with the Facebook ad group, I don't have a scale.
Right.
So I don't know if I'm going, say I go on the cheap end and I say I'll spend $5 a day on ads or something like that. And I don't know if I'm just throwing my money away. I don't know if that's.
I think that's an awesome point, because that is what we see constantly, especially in our business, and I know you see it all the time, where we get people that come in and look at digital advertising as being cheap and expensive,
Right.
because they have the option to only spend $5 a day if they want to. The problem with that is most of the time, like we were just talking about, that's not enough to deliver any kind of a return, right?
Right.
At some point, there's just a law of numbers. You have to reach a certain number of people to convert anybody.
Sure.
And so I tend to say, yeah, if you can only afford to spend $5 a day, you probably can't afford to advertise, because
Right.
that's not enough. There are very few instances where I would look at that and say, yeah, that's enough. That's gonna do what you want it to do. But because you have that option, when it comes to search advertising or social media and those things, people look at it and they say, well, it's really inexpensive. I can advertise,
Sure.
but that doesn't mean you should. And that is something we see all the time, right? And it's the same thing as going into a business being undercapitalized, right? At a certain point, it just takes a certain amount to do it to a level where it's going to work.
Right.
And generally speaking, $5 a day is not a level where it's going to work.
All right. I'm going to have to up my budget.
Yeah. But, really the takeaway, honestly, is test, measure, pivot. Test, measure, pivot, test, measure, pivot. And that should be the same with all of your marketing, but especially when it comes to your Facebook advertising. Hey, YouTube, thanks for watching. If you like this, click on the links for more from the Messengers. Don't forget to visit us online on our website at messengers.blog, and click the subscribe button below and hit the little bell icon for notifications when new videos post. Thanks.